have it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it going?
Yeah.
Oh. It said smile for a thumbnail.
I know, it doesn't do that. It's not doing that.
Okay, well.
It said smile for a thumbnail, and then it just, it freezed over there.
Garbage.
I don't know why.
I don't know. Well, I guess it's going to be awkward for people who view this later. Sorry, it's all a learning progress. Besides, aren't you supposed to be in bed, kiddo? Let me guess. You can't sleep? Sounds like what you need is a bedtime story from Sean Arthur Cox, or, as I like to call it, BS with S.A.C. Let's see what BS we have for you tonight, shall we? Oh, look. It's my first book, New Tricks. Copyright 2013 by me. Don't steal it. Chapter 1. The Laughing Raven. How long had he been running? The ragged boy wondered. A week? A fortnight? The days had long ago begun to blur together, each a never-ending collage of scorching heat, searing pain, and arid, rocky barrens, with only brief breaks for water when he found it, and sleep when he collapsed. His thin limbs pumped furiously beneath the filthy tatters that had once been his favorite clothes. His skin had turned red beneath the blazing sun of the First Realm, his lips dry and cracked. His dark hair hung in shaggy clumps, thick and tangled with sweat and dirt, concealing his sunburned face and gaunt cheeks. His brown eyes had sunken in from exhaustion, and deep within them burned a fire reserved for madmen and the possessed. When the desert people saw him all but flying over the dunes, emaciated frame silhouetted against the silver moon at night, the nomads had more than once raised arms against him in fear that he might be a Bakira, a demon of the wastes that stole the bodies of those whose lives had been claimed by the vast expanse of nothingness. But they never hit him, never caught him. He never gave them the chance, and most clans were content to have him pass them without interest, and left well enough alone. He had been fortunate, too, to have avoided the attentions of any crag lizards and sand dragons, and for all the heat, the days had not been cloudy, allowing him to follow the wandering star east without drifting off course and becoming hopelessly lost in the barren wastes. He could only hope his luck would hold out just a little longer. If he could make it to the fourth gate, he could leave the First Realm and all its miseries behind. He would have to brave the wall of storms, and there would certainly be more suffering in the Fourth Realm. He would still need to run as though the nine hells themselves dogged him, but the climate would treat him more kindly. There were trees in the Fourth Realm, and rain. Cool breezes and afternoon showers whipping through the piney forests would refresh him on his endless race to save them all. If he could just make it to the fourth gate, he could run a few more days, and he needed no more than that. His name was William Overhill, for his family had for 3 generations lived over the hill. Had, until the fire. Now, as far as he knew, there was only William. Not Will or Willie, just William. Sometimes called Small William on account of his being a head and a half shorter than William Thatcher. Sometimes called Twig on account of his near meatless bones, and often called You Boy. But now none of that mattered. Now there was probably no one left alive who knew any of those names. Now there was only a frail boy who raced through the lands the gods reviled, and a ghost's hope of saving people certainly already dead. But he had run too far to stop now. He was close now, and the madness wouldn't let him stop. He only needed to run a few more days. A few more days until salvation. A few more days until he reached the Laughing Raven. The Laughing Raven teemed with creatures from all walks of life, and 3 forms of life that did not walk at all. The tavern had an air of almost absurd optimism that put even the oldest of rivalries at ease. Rich and poor, elf and dwarf, even clerics and particularly well-behaved undead could be seen mingling together there. Patrons from far and wide hailed the place as a beacon of hope throughout all the civilized world. When times were darkest and the world seemed most grim, anyone could go to the Laughing Raven to find answers to questions that plagued them. Perhaps the Raven owed its unflinchingly positive atmosphere to the lively music performed every night by a quartet of some of the finest bards the 12 realms had ever heard. Perhaps it was the decoratively mounted weapons and monster heads and skulls in jars, each accompanied by an informative plaque. Perhaps it was the row of dartboards on the southern wall, or the deck of cards provided to each table. Perhaps, too, it was the free beer the pub provided. Or perhaps only a fool would not realize that the real reason for its perpetual merriment was the tavern's barkeep and owner. He was a tall man, fully 6'7" when barefoot, and taller still when wearing his boots of mile stride or his boots of prowler's silence. His body belied its 52 years of age, and his frame could intimidate the most diabolical of warlocks with its complete collection of perfectly sculpted sinewy muscles that rippled like a battle standard in the post-slaughter breeze. His powerful hands could crush bones and boulders, yet still handle the most delicate orchid without bruising its petals. A dark beard, both rugged and well-groomed, lined his chiseled chin and strong jaw. This beard, coupled with his long, silky dark brown hair, framed his chastity-defying facial features, the most striking of which were his piercing eyes of palest blue that could flash from friendly to petrifying in half a heartbeat. Women swooned at his smile. Men did too, but typically much more discreetly. The man's name was Olivander. As christened, he was called Olivander Barlow Smythe. By reputation, his patrons called him Olivander the Mighty or Olivander the Great. All official titles included, his name was His High Excellency Sir Baron Olivander Barlow Smythe, Esquire, First Earl of Oxbridge, Lord of Caldlow Manor, Keeper of the King's Lands, Slayer of Dragons, originally Slayer of the Dragon Vagel, Slayer of Orvo the Black Dragon, and Slayer of the Great Spike Dragon of Palace Pass, until convenience and practicality combined them all with all other dragons he'd slain. Defeater of Helmut the Butcher, Conqueror of the Shadowlands, Liberator of Cities, as with dragons, shortened for convenience, Friend of the Meek, and Anointed High Protector of the 12 Realms. Once upon a time, it was longer still, but Slayer of Kobolds and Slayer of Orcs and Troll Slayers, etc., were all combined into Slayer of Monsters, which was later dropped once the Slayer of Dragons title was appended to his name. He preferred Ollie the Barkeep, or if brevity was more your style, just Ollie. "I say, Baron Olivander Smythe, old chap," came a voice from down the bar. Ollie sighed inwardly. Anyone who used phrases like "I say" and "old chap" were nobility of some kind, which almost certainly meant some king somewhere wanted some golden chalice fetched, or magic dagger destroyed, or other equally tedious task done, and they'd try to pay him some large but meaningless sum of money to make him do it. This was his least favorite part of the job. Strangers attempting to pull him from his comfort zone, pouring frothy mugs of ale. Regardless, he'd been called, and a barkeep mustn't keep his patrons waiting. Ollie made the long walk to the other end of the bar. He sensed the noble, whoever he was, had deliberately chosen a seat as far away as possible. They liked thinking that others, no matter how powerful, existed solely to convenience them. His pale eyes grew friendly, his smile warmed. 3 stools down, 2 women swooned, and one otherwise rugged woodsman blushed a little and quickly turned to his drink. The noble in question rather reminded Olivander of a peacock. He wore a silk surcoat and shades of rich blues with turquoise buttons and green green embroidery. Beneath it, he wore a bright purple tunic and lavender ascot that puffed up below his chin like a bird in heat. A very fine hat of the same cloth and hue as the surcoat adorned the gentleman's blonde-haired head with boyish face and self-assured smile. A large multicolored feather jutted back at an angle from the hat, like a pompous glowing arrow declaring this way to a man of no small consequence. Imposing he was not. "What can I get ya?" Olivander asked, deliberately speaking in a manner more coarse than one would expect from a known baron. "Well," began the peacock, like a tavern wench about to share a piece of juicy gossip, "my cousin, only the Duke of Pembroke. Perhaps you've heard of him? He's the second most influential duke in the 6th realm, you know." Olivander eyed him with the mock interest and feigned being impressed. "Your cousin to the Duke of Pembroke? You don't say." "I do say," replied the peacock. "Bless the gods, I'm ever so fortunate enough to claim that felicity. My cousin the Duke has heard of the most amazing artifact, the Sword of McFinn. I thought it would be such jolly good fun for you to shake it up like the old days and retrieve it for him." "I don't know," mumbled Ollie, playing ignorant. "What's so great about this Sword of McFinn, anyway?" Olivander had, in fact, heard of the Duke of Pembroke, just as he had already heard of the Sword of McFinn. Everyone knew of the sword, Legend had it that McFinn was just an ordinary man who stumbled across a sword of immense power, making him nigh invincible when he wielded it. If one could believe the tales, and one often did, the blade granted magical abilities to those who possessed it, though the matter of how to activate its powers was the subject of much debate. Some versions of the legend said it would only work for McFinn's rightful heir. Others claimed one needed to polish the sword with holy water, and another version of the tale said innocent blood. Either way, he didn't trust the ambitions of the Duke of Pembroke for one instant with it, especially considering the multitude of powers the sword allegedly bestowed. The only thing Olivander needed to know was whether the peacock would play it straight with him or feed him a lie. Oh, the sword is nothing really. My cousin, the Duke of Pembroke, simply finds himself attracted to the art of antiquity, and such an exquisite piece of rarity as the sword of McFinn would look just lovely above his mantle. Or in his hands, thought Olivander. Very well, it was settled. If the peacock would deceive the barkeep for ill gain, Olivander would dismiss the conniver post-haste without the opportunity to explain himself or even finish his drink. And he definitely wouldn't get a warm exit. Dropping the impressed yokel act, Olivander's eyes burned fiercely as he hardened his composure. He leaned his intimidating body close to the peacock, eyeing him squarely, faces mere inches apart. You need to leave. You don't understand, the peacock said slowly, slamming his fist on the counter. My cousin, the Duke. But he never had the opportunity to finish the thought. The Laughing Raven had an unspoken code that everyone seemed to know. Everyone but the peacock, that was. Within its walls, all were free to laugh and mingle, to drink beer and swap stories and sing songs, to enjoy the darts and cards and good company. They were free, nay, encouraged to chat up old Ollie the barkeep. They were even free to sleep in the rooms upstairs if they were down on their luck, or too drunk to find their horses. Violence, however, would not be tolerated, and when Olivander told a person to leave, the matter was immediately closed without discussion. The only acceptable response was to stand without delay and leave the tavern quickly, peacefully, and silently. The peacock had chosen to do none of the above. In an instant, hands swarmed over him, grabbing and pulling in several directions, all of which hinted toward the door. Olivander watched as his customers drew the outspoken noble roughly across the floor. Were it not for the unexpected arrival of an elf, the peacock would have found himself hoisted out a closed door. The crowd jeered the elf's poor timing. In an instant, the peacock was gone. In another, he was forgotten. One more, and a red-faced farmer filled the vacancy at the bar, leaving no trace of the whole encounter except for one dart player, who now sported a very fine hat. Olivander would never have taken the job, regardless of how the peacock played it. He liked it here. He had friends here. The last thing he wanted was to go gallivanting across the countryside, sleeping on the rocks and dirt, exposed to the elements and the nuisances of wandering monsters, all for treasure he didn't need, and glory for someone he had no intentions of glorifying. Shouldn't he have done that, muttered one of the tavern's many guests, this one short, stocky, and bearded, probably a dwarf. Some new fellow Ollie had never seen before. The warning rolled out in a thick, earthy brogue that reminded the worldly barkeep of his childhood days. Olivander cocked an eyebrow at the interjection, his head tilted ever so slightly to the side. Oh? Duke of Pembroke's a right arrogant bastard. He'll be back and he'll nae be happy. Is that so? Ollie asked, his manner the epitome of nonchalance. Aye, came the richly accented voice. Olivander shrugged, unconcerned, and poured the man another pint. He had no fear of the peacock's return. As an individual, he could be handled as easily as had already been done. Even with the Duke's armies, the peacock would find little success. So long as it remained under Olivander's protection, the Laughing Raven was impregnable and untouchable. Out of respect for the great hero, many of the Duke's soldiers would not raise arms against the Laughing Raven, and most of the rest would defer out of fear. Fewer actions could be deemed more bold or more stupid than standing against Olivander. Not only would he crush the soldiers single-handedly, the offending Duke would find himself suddenly at war with the scores of kings and earls and marquises that owed Olivander both their lives and their sovereignty due to some quest he'd taken on their behalf in years past. Any future mention of the incident from the Duke, let alone aggression, would result in a very downtrodden, potentially dead Duke indeed. It's past your bedtime. I think we'll go ahead and put a pin in it for here. Good night, slugger. I'll see you in the morning. We'll finish this story tomorrow. Well, we'll continue it. It's a long story.